Making your first amigurumi toy can be a very gratifying experience and can give you a huge sense of achievement. But attempting your first amigurumi toy without the proper preparation can lead to a complete disaster. So hear me out as I share with you my 8 must-have supplies for amigurumi project. And by the way, I'm gonna leave a link to each of these items in the description below, in case you need any of these. Okay, the first one is easy, some yarn. You can generally use any yarn that you prefer, but with some considerations. First one would be to avoid using black yarn, especially if you're a beginner and you've never used it before. Black yarn tends to be difficult to work with as you will struggle to see your stitches while you're working on the project. The other one would be to avoid fluffy yarn or textured yarn. And again, it's going to make the pattern difficult to follow and your stitches to be difficult to see. They tend to break very often, and honestly, it's going to leave fluff everywhere. I do like to use cotton for my amigurumi toys, and I find that the sturdy fiber of cotton, together with the fact that your stitches will be very defined, is going to give your end project a very clean look. It also helps maintain the shape over time, just to the sturdiness and how cotton tends to be. The second thing, a crochet hook. In terms of hooks, you can pick any hook that you like to work with. The only thing that I'm seeing lots of amigurumi designers recommend is to pick a hook size that is 1 or 2 sizes smaller than the one recommended for your yarn. The idea behind that is that a smaller hook size will help create a tighter structure in your project. It's gonna make a compact shape and also is gonna prevent holes to show at the end of your project. The downside is though that you're gonna increase your tension and it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to work on your stitches. And sometimes people are complaining about having pain a little bit earlier while working on these projects. So my recommendation would be just try different hook sizes and try and see which one is working best with your yarn. I honestly feel like that it's better to finish a project rather than never start one because you don't have the right hook size. Now the following one, stitch markers. For the majority, amigurumi projects are work in a continuous rounds. So what basically means is that you keep working in a round without a clear definition between when a round is starting and when a round is finishing. And using stitch marker is going to be so important, especially if you're working on a project of a certain dimension. So just imagine you're working 50, 60, 70 stitches in your round. And if you don't know exactly where did you start, when the round is going to finish, it's going to be a complete disaster. So stitch markers are so important to make sure that you keep track of your work and you always know where do you have to start and finish. And if you don't have a stitch marker, there's plenty of other options that you can actually use in order to mark your round. A metallic pin is a great alternative for stitch markers, but also, for example, just pick a scrap of yarn and position it at the beginning of your next round. And this is going to be so useful because you visually see where your round is going to start. The following one is honestly pretty straightforward, but it's easier. You're gonna need to cut your yarn at the end of your work, finish off, and basically weave your ends into your project. Which means that the next item is a darning needle or a tapestry needle. A darning needle is simply a very large and big needle. It isn't very sharp and has an eye on it, which is big enough to thread your yarn or embroidery floss. There are different versions of this type of needles. So mine is a straight darning needle, but you might find some versions with a slanted edge. They are going to be useful, especially if you're working on a round shape, because they're going to help to work around your stitches. You'll need them both to weave your ends into your project, but also in amigurumi project, they're going to be useful to sew different parts of the body, like ears, legs, arms, etc. But the more you experience different patterns, they are going to be so useful because they're going to allow you to experiment and actually upskill your knowledge in amigurumi toy. Next one is stuffing. Amigurumi toys are 3D shapes, and you can imagine that without stuffing, they would just be flat and lifeless. The filling, in fact, helps the amigurumi to hold its shape, whether it's round, square, any other shape. And based on the amount of stuffing that you add to your project, and make it more sturdy or a little bit more squishy. The more popular option to stuffing amigurumi is to use polyester fiber film, and it's very commonly found in craft stores Even online on Amazon, you can find plenty of options for that. But if you're struggling to find some, I have a tip for you. I actually use IKEA cushions. I know. You might have like some old cushions around, or maybe you can buy some new ones, etc. But I tend to use the polyester fiber feel inside of these cushions. And I have to be honest, I find it no difference from the regular polyfill that you find in craft stores. Now, let's talk about pins. You might ask where to use pins in amigurumi toy. Well, you might find that at the end of your project you need to attach some of these body parts like ears or arms, and using pins to position them in the right spots is going to give you a good idea of the shape and the right position of these parts in your amigurumi body. But also, you just don't want to get them wrong and suddenly sewing ears or legs or arms that are just not in the right spot. So pins are a great option in order to position correctly your amigurumi. And finally, safety eye. Can you imagine an amigurumi toy without eyes? Well, of course there are some, but I do think that eyes are just bringing out the character and the personality of amigurumi projects. They just give them life, right? And safety eyes to me are just great to give your project a twist. They come in different shapes, in different colors. There's so many options to spark your creativity. They're generally made of plastic and they come with a back clip to ensure that you can secure them within your project. Just one thing though, even though they're called safety eyes, it doesn't mean that they're completely safe. There's still a risk of choking hazard, so just be mindful, especially if you're giving your toys to toddlers or young kids, because safety eyes can still come away. Just be careful and secure them as much as possible, but also understand that it's an handmade project. There's always a little risk. So these were my 8 must-have supplies for amigurumi toys. Yes, of course, there's lots of other supplies that you can use, but I think that these are the necessary ones in order to achieve the best results and actually complete your first amigurumi toy. Anyway, let me know in the comments if I'm missing anything. Are you using any other supply that you think is absolutely important to have? I'm curious to know. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel to keep improving your crochet skills. Ciao!